Greetings, everyone. Nathan Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. We're going to be talking about what makes the best villain, evil campaigns, and heroes. And with me, I have
Kienata, and yes, evil. Lots and lots of evil things, and evil players, and bad guys your GM will use against you, and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like there's a few things. I know we've already gotten requests for certain types of villainy, but I
Before
think
the stream started,
there's like really important things that make a villain, I think, a success, and it's a realism. Unless you're going for the kind of like kooky, funny bad guy villain, or the person that's like kind of actually crazy but wants to do this thing, because I like when villainy has an element of that, I can see where this guy went wrong and went down a bad path and is now like squeezing the life force out of sprites or something.
This conversation's going to get dark. Please get your children out of the room.
It's not the blood of the sprites. Come on now, it's not that bad.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I feel like it's a good starting point for a discussion on villainy.
Directions to attack evil from. We had a suggest. Let's go dark. So where do you want to tackle this from? Because I am ready to go with this from every angle here. So fire away.
Okay, how about we start with a little backdrop? I'm gonna like snatch a few things out of D&D Beyond.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna go with that because that'll give us a nice this is like what we're kind of talking about when we're starting the baseline.
Okay.
And hopefully I will press the right button in this and not make everything explode. Oh, it was the right thing. Excellent. I like when that happens.
Perfect.
So here we've got I'm using D&D Beyond, and we're in the DMG on villains. And there's a whole section on villainy and the villain in general, and it talks about a few things. And I actually played a game where I completely randomly rolled every NPC and the villain, and that was how I figured out my entire quest. So I had basically planned out about 14 levels of a campaign simply on a couple of random dice rolls and then like fleshing out an area and then rolling NPCs. I got everything from, what's the blacksmith and what's going on with him to, the person in charge of the church in that region. And then from there I went with everything else. And basically I had a giant stack of like 90 NPCs I just rolled up out of the NPC generator. And I just assigned what I felt like the task or personality, like what goes with what. So sometimes it'd be like, I'm feeling inspired. This guy with like a lisp and a grumpy personality, I think he's a blacksmith. And maybe he had an accident. Maybe he was going to be a fighter and he got hit in the face with a sword during practice.
Or took an arrow to the knee.
Took an arrow to the face, to the lip. And now he's like always gotta so I always like put my jaw over to... I do my jaw over a little bit and talk like a little bit different. It's not quite a lisp, but it's a speech issue that he has consistently, and that's just what I decided to go with. So I had a villain, and I'm not going to talk about him because certain people are playing in the campaign currently. But they're only level 5, and they've got quite a long way to go before they actually like get in the full depth of it. And that all came from a whole bunch of random dice rolls. And some of the things here, you've got the villain scheme, like why they like objective and scheme. I think is a big deal to villainy because there's a reason they do something that puts them against the laws of the world. And they're not all just crazy obsessed. They can be obsessed, but some of them have a task that cannot be done any other way. They can't be done in the confines of society.
Right.
Or,
and
go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Or
I was just gonna say I'm sorry. I'm so excited about this topic tonight. I absolutely love this kind of tea. There's so many ways to classify villains. Someone actually already said earlier in chat, I'm trying to keep up with you guys, but you are very chatty tonight. Already said, what about misunderstood? And absolutely, what about misunderstood? there are so many angles that you can take a villain from. It doesn't have to be murdery, child-eating monstrosity.
Yeah, and that's one of the things with villains. You can have that easy villain like I'm an ogre, I eat villagers and I steal whatever stuff I want from them, and then I go off and I'll come back and do it again. That's like the easy in your face. I'm evil. I don't care if you know it or I know it. It's irrelevant. I'm doing this thing. So that is an easy kind of overt villainy.
Right.
And it
right.
doesn't matter whether or not they know it, they're doing evil.
Yes. There's also more manipulative villains. People who aren't necessarily doing anything overtly evil themselves, but are manipulating others or influencing others to do negative things.
Or the type of villain that you just are like, I feel kind of scummy hearing about what you want to do.
Right,
and it's
exactly.
Might not even be breaking the law. Might just be manipulating and behind the scenes politicking towards a certain direction.
Ed does everything. In Twitch chat said, but I like a nice medium well-cooked child though. Yeah, this conversation is going to get dark. So evil that when he speaks a human toe shoots out of his mouth, like that kind of.
Because he just got finished eating someone.
Exactly.
And then there's the people that are twisted towards that. They are a good person, but some event has occurred in their life, and rather than rise above it and say, I'm going to like seek justice or whatever because I don't want this to ever happen to anybody else again, they're like, I think I'm going to figure out how to like take what I'm feeling out on other people. And that's not what they think. That's not like, oh, I should probably do this. But it's just they're reacting to the damage they've taken, whether physical, psychic, or whatever, or like, socially taken. And they're like, I'm going to act out emotionally. Yeah, I'm going to act out. And that's a villain that's not just I'm naturally evil, like an ogre eating people and taking stuff. So there's like the rampaging kind of thing, and then there's more of the seeking revenge or vengeance, and it doesn't even need to be against the person or organization or structure that hurt them originally. They can just lash out. I mean, there's people that are nasty to the cash, in real life, and to the cashier, to the guy who, was their waiter and messed up their order. They're just like nasty. It's like they're already upset or nasty and grumpy about something, and they're lashing out against them. But when you take somebody who's like a 10th level wizard, or a fighter that then turns into a bandit king after events in their lives has kind of led them down a wrong path.
And I would argue that evil starts at the game table. And what I mean by that is not that you are evil, but that what you all have decided as a group of players and as essentially your own little micro society, what you all have decided is evil is what makes evil. For instance, recently we were talking to Nate about his cleric of life or of nature. And we have to talk about that cleric tonight. That is a topic of discussion. It is fair game.
Totally misunderstood.
Totally misunderstood.
Lawful good. Good guy. Upstanding citizen who wants to save lives.
He did things that in my ideal of society, I would consider those evil acts, which immediately lends to the concept of what is society like in the areas that you're playing in. A wicked king that's been oppressive to his people, maybe where you come from, these people have a good life. Like, you're more than happy to work at the plow all day and get whipped while you're working. That sounds great. It's better than the, dungeon or horrible Underdark scenario that your character came from. So definitely establishing what you at the tabletop consider evil is a good thing. And I would also say, when you're playing with evil, check the comfort level of your players.
Oh, that's definitely something to bring up. As PCs playing evil characters, and as a DM being the evil guy.
Yes, you you really, really need to talk to your players. And if you haven't had the opportunity, typically what I do with a table of players, I try and feel people out and see where everybody's comfort zone is, especially if these are my friends. I have an approximate idea. But definitely try and keep your evil when you have a bad guy or poor things going on in the universe. Keep those things within the comfort level of everybody at the table. Don't do something that is so messed up that someone's like, wow, that is really dark. You really don't. You can do evil, evil campaign stuff without ever making anyone uncomfortable.
You know what? We kind of I didn't look at these beforehand. I mean, I looked at them like 2 years ago when I rolled this stuff up, but I haven't looked at them since. And I'm like, yeah, these are pretty good because they've got the three of the things we talked about: revenge, passion, having influence over things. And then there's the classic villainy stuff, like I want to have immortality and I will do it any which way I can, or I want to have superpower, so I'm going to sacrifice people to demons and things. And then there's just like the mayhem. I think is like the people who want to they want to see the world kind of degrade into some kind of dystopian thing or apocalypse. They want to see the world burn. Yeah. So some people just want to see the world burn, either because they don't fit into the society, are kind of crazed, or they think that after the world burns, they're going to stand upon the ashes and make something new. So those are the three versions of whatever way you decide to enact mayhem as the villain. Mm-hmm. But you have like that. Oh, it's just like the people who wish for zombie apocalypse, or some kind of like crazy overthrow of stuff. Is they think that they are going to be higher up in the new hierarchy when that occurs, and that's not normally what happens. Normally, hierarchies collapse when you have crazy stuff like dystopia things or apocalypses and things like that, and it gets all kinds of nasty. So they might think that, oh yeah, I'll do this in the new order of things, but normally, you end up dead. And that usually happens to the villain. I found that a nice way to kind of finish off a villain is some kind of like poetic justice way, where the thing they're trying to do is what undoes them. Mm-hmm. But that's, ending villains. It could be another topic entirely.
Beholder Joker apparently is an idea. So the Joker character, and it's a beholder.
He just wants to see the world disintegrated, or all his perfect image.
Yeah, exactly. Why can't the world be beautiful like me?
He has this scheme to open up portals to the elemental earth where the whole world becomes crystalline and he can see his reflected image in everything.
My favorite kinds of villains are ones that are operating off of really simplistic premises. Premises. Are we making words up? I don't know what the word. Anyway, I like the ones that operate. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. We can make things up. It's fine. I like the ones like Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg. It's good to see you again, Father. Where are the stones? Yeah, so there's the bad guy from Fifth Element, and basically his entire motivation, greed. Just greed. He wants more stuff.
Well, greed can be seen as a desire to accumulate things, which is accumulating power in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So if you have an entire armada of ships and you're greedy for being able to possess that, then that's just simply you're greedy for the amassing of power in the end. So I mean, those doodads, those stones sounded like they were going to do some pretty cool stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
I want them.
My costs have tripled.
Yeah. So
Lex Luthor Dragon. Is he bald? No spines on his head.
He's got really smooth scales on the dome.
My comfort level with how I portray villains tends to be very like comic book, like 90s comic book dark. That's about as dark as I go. Batman the animated series, like that's about as dark as I go. I typically don't go into violence towards like no violence towards kids, no really horrible acts take place. You might have a murder, but I'm not going to go into grisly detail about it.
And if anybody's read The Sword of Truth, in that series, there is the main villain, and I feel like it's like, okay, you're dumping like evil acts upon this guy. Come on, okay, I get it. He's evil. Let's move on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because it's just really in your face. Basically, he did not want to leave it up to your imagination on how evil this guy was. And I'm like, I would rather have left it up to imagination. Can we just fade away from this scene, please?
Yeah, exactly.
So there was a few times where I was like, I'm done reading this part. And well, you can do that with a book as an individual. You can't do that at the table.
Right.
So it's good to know your player's comfort zone, because you can like dial it back. You can be like, okay, I'm just going to skip over this little situation, or I'm going to skip over this description and stop being so descriptive of terrible things. Like mutilated corpses or something like that. Like, okay, like let's describe one or two, and then we know how horrible the entire room is. Done.
Right. And there are really easy ways to talk about really messed up stuff where the imagination can take over, and your players get the idea. That's enough. You know, a really wicked dungeon, like medieval dungeon, not Dungeons and Dragons dungeon, that has imprisoned people. An elderly man is shackled to the walls. He's clearly been there for months. He has wounds around his wrists from where the shackles have dug in, and he's completely emaciated. I don't need to tell you that he's clearly not been taken down to use the bathroom, right? This is some gross stuff. I don't need to include any of that. Your imagination's got it covered. So I
already filled in that spot, actually. I was like, yep, they probably didn't let him go.
Exactly. So you really can just use some good description and drop it, and your players will be like, I'm setting him free. I don't care what we were doing. I'm setting him free right now. That guy's leaving with me, or I'm leaving in a body bag. One of the two. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So, let's grab some of the villainy suggestions from the chat and like go over them.
Villainy suggestions. Okay. Yeah. We already have, we should do first come, first serve.
Okay.
And we had someone literally show up like 20 minutes early to ask us to do comical villains. So, yeah. And we, so start with the suggestions, and we can start on the idea of the comical villain.
Okay.
Fire.
So for me, comical villain is not necessarily that they are always like maybe like klutzy or whatever. Basically, they have a flaw that is stopping them from achieving villainy, besides that they actually like want to take over the world or some other kind of harebrained scheme, you know, that they have some kind of glaring flaw in their personality that you can exploit. And I think that makes a comedic villain. But is there another type that you might be considering?
Well, for me, the way I have always had, when I had comedic villains, I really like the names Fitzroy and Nimril. I use them like there's always a guy you meet named Fitzroy. There's always a guy you meet named Nimril. Every campaign, I don't know what happened. Anyway, I had this guy named Fitzroy, and Fitzroy was in Shadowrun, and he was kind of a comedic villain because Fitzroy would show up with massive amounts of firepower, destroy everything before him just to try and corner the players. In order to try and, you know, finally end them once and for all. But usually he ended up like saving their lives or doing something that they needed done anyway, or helping them out of a sticky situation. So you end up with these characters that come in that like in D&D, you could have a super evil, I mean, if we want to be super tropey, an evil wizard. So we can have the evil wizard who just magically appears and feel my wrath. And you're like, thanks, dude. You just killed 14 orcs. We're leaving. And just turn around and walk away.
We're absolutely surrounded by this coven of assassins, and you just dropped meteor shower on us, and they all died.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we got hurt, but we're still alive, so we ran away.
Exactly. So I really like the concept of an accidentally helpful villain. That's definitely something I think
definitely would fall in comedy.
Super inept villains, like some guy with a sword and a super awesome suit of plate mail. And he is decked to the nines and ready to fight. And every time he shows up to fight you, he is super pedestrian. Like he's misses every hit. You basically let the guy live because you feel bad for him. But so you tie him to a tree to get rid of him for today. And then 3 weeks later, he shows up. I've been tracking you. And you're like, oh my God, we're going to have to kill him or get him arrested or something.
And all he is trying to assault you.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's not like killing people in the street to get you angry at him or anything.
No.
Yeah, you insult a noble that might not be that great at fighting, but owns good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, a tuned plate mail or something.
Precisely. Or maybe the noble is using his resources very poorly. I've hired the finest mercenaries in the 9 worlds. And you see his group of mercenaries is like farmers. Not, what are we supposed to do over here, boss? Kill them all. All right, then. Like just super inept. Can't do it. So
I will say, if you have people that are used to regular D&D campaigns, don't overuse this. Because my first real villain that the players fought, the real villain, well, no, that's not true. The misunderstood wizard with the botched experimental things going on had a whole
sounds
bunch.
Like it's Coric.
Had like a whole bunch of methods and things get loose, and the reason was he lost control of one of these like mini gates that were only supposed to let methods out of, but something bigger came through, smashed up his lab, and then was smashing up the control collars for all these methods. So the methods were getting out through the water, they were getting out through the earth, they were getting out through into the trees and fire and things like that. So the players are all coming up, kill like several of the 3 out of 4 of the people they meet, they kill. And then they get to this villain guy and they just stomp him. They basically captured him running away and just dogpiled on top of him. Because he was just totally inadequate as fighting. He had never been in the combat. This was like a 3rd level book learned mage came out of school and decided I'm gonna take a job off this message board. I know alchemy. I know magical instruments, and he's gonna go off and start like the money that he's given to start this project. So he's like a mercenary mage that started a project. Well, he failed at containing the project. And the town suffered for it. The inn burnt down. The players got all kinds of beat up. And they finally got there, and they're like ready to like totally kick everybody's butt. And then they get to this mage, and they're like, we jump on him as he ineffectually tries to run away and falls down. Yeah. So I was really happy they didn't kill him, but I can tell some of them were like, I kind of feel disappointed in this. I really like, they were thinking they were like gonna stop some kind of villainy from occurring, and it's just incompetency they stopped.
See, and I think that's perfectly fantastic and adds depth to stories. But there are so many stories that you can tell with your bad guys.
Yeah, you got to make sure you don't overdo your favorites. So if your favorite is comedic villain, you can't overdo it, or it's gonna kind of like degrade the overall enjoyment of the game. Unless everybody loves comedic villains, and that's just the way you want to go.
It's kind of the classic lesson, right? If you run D&D games and every single time your players do something, you monkey paw them. Basically, here's a magic sword. Oh, by the way, it's cursed and you can't drop it now. Here's a dungeon hallway, y'all, 10 by 10 corridor. You're going down the 10 by 10 corridor and there's a trap every 6 feet. If you overuse any theme, you're just going to turn your players into a bunch of incredibly fearful, paranoid people who don't want to game with you because they know what to expect.
So I would say the type of villainy when you're in a dungeon master, like, don't overuse it to the point you want to use it that they like kind of forgot about this type of villain in the campaign. Like, oh, this might be like that other guy from 7 sessions ago. Well, there's been like 3 other major people they had to fight since then, so it's not like in their face all the time. It's like you want to do traps infrequently enough that the players might forget to check for one of them.
Oh.
And if you overdo it, they check every single opportunity that they think the trap could possibly be. And then it's like, okay, you just got to stop having traps for a while. Even if you had them, just rip them up, say, oh, they're not here. You're fine. Nope. Oh, you didn't find any traps. And then when they step on then they step on it, they're like, oh, there wasn't any traps? Okay. And then eventually they're going to forget that there were even traps even exist for some reason.
Exactly.
It just happens. They get lulled into a false sense of security. So when you use a villain, you want to use them, you want to underuse them because you don't want to get into that state where they're just like, oh, every villain we fight is evil and they're always doing something terrible or horrible and have no redeeming qualities, so we can just off them instead of talk to them every time. So when they start saying, oh, you found me, blah, 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 he doesn't get an arrow to the throat immediately because they actually listen to what he has to say.
Mr. GM, is he monologuing? Can I roll initiative?
Does
no,
this count?
I don't care what he has to say.
Yeah, does this count as the assassin strike before combat? Like, am I going to get double damage?
He's distracted. He's talking. Can I just start poking him like a pincushion?
Yeah, and I have had rogues in games before walk around while the guy's talking and wait for him to look the other way, even though he was talking with some other character, and just be like, all right, I'm stabbing him.
My machinations. And he's just ranting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the frequency of any type of villainy. I'd say is you don't want the characters in your game to just go the assumption route that they know what they're facing right now.
Sean Gleeman has an interesting question. I know you guys are posting tons of stuff in chat. I promise as we move through this, we're going to start really doing a deep dive on chat, and we'll try and get you guys into this. John Gleeman said, is there a place for occasional comedic villain in a campaign that's overall serious? I think absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, just like you could just be there on the day that guy's rolling ones. I mean, I've had some really funny games where I have just stunk almost the entire session. I roll like 3 ones that game, or I just didn't hit the entirety of combat and they resisted all the spells I've cast. Well, I mean, if I was a villain, that would be really embarrassing. I mean, as a player character, we still defeated the bad guys, so I could be like, yeah, I was part of the team. I made that happen, even if I did no damage.
And I would say that if you're running a super serious or even a very dark campaign and you decide to crack out a comedic villain, your players are not going to be expecting it, which makes it an absolutely beautiful choice. I think that's a great place to have a comedic villain. It's the same thing as what we were talking about with traps and stuff like that. If you're not using it, use it just for one session, just to change the day for them. Try and keep things fresh for the players.
And you can also have it where they think, especially if the villain is coming from the thing that, like, I want to see the world burn, and the players come upon him and, like, we're actually not impressed. We just killed a lich who was, like, sacking villagers every day and eating their souls to fuel his phylactery. So what you got going on is not that dark, man. And he's like, what? Like, aren't you like angry with me? Don't you want to avenge such and such? It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, you're bad, but you're not that bad. And I think that would be really disappointing to a certain mindset.
Well, I think here we go. This is another good question. Andrew Jackson said, what of the redemption of a villain?
That is definitely another nice story route.
What if you had a cleric who had done a bunch of really evil stuff when building, I don't know, a sacred grove? And
this sounds familiar. Except for the evil part.
Well, another thing I would say is, you know, when you're running a villain and you're trying to tell a redemption story, if you dig in the brain up here and avoid the immediate easy stuff to do, I'm evil now because of love, a betrayal of love, or I'm evil now because of revenge. Take those things off the table and let me know what you come up with. That's when you're going to end up with somebody who's really interesting for your players. There's always room to use those old school tropes and old school ideas, but if you take the tropes, just write them down on a piece of paper and say, I won't do this. Put them in a box, throw it away. What you come up with after that could be really interesting. I'd like to know if the farmer Magan from The Hobbit, who was chasing the hobbits with a scythe, a farming scythe with like a 2.5 foot blade, is he evil if he catches the hobbits and impales one? right? Like this, you were in Farmer Maggins' crop, right? Like, is that a bad guy now? So
I think it's more the threat of violence in that situation with the farmer and the scythe. I don't think you'd ever get. I don't think you'd ever scythe them.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because I mean that's evil, even if they are people stealing from you.
And this was actually something else we were going to hit on. Pharma Exis said, I tried to be the villain in a game we were running. Unfortunately, the other players decided to join me and kill their leader, even though I attacked them. Even though I attacked them all and killed one. So this was something else we were going to talk about, which is evil players.
Oh yeah,
we're probably going to bounce around a lot tonight. But
yeah, let's get to that soon.
Let's get to that.
Not
soon.
now, but
okay.
soon.
Okay.
All right. So the thing about kind of you have a villain, and you can do something that's going to alter his or her path towards basically towards a region of a way of acting that's not making you think, yeah, we've got to kill these people or we've got to imprison them forever or whatever. I think a major thing, okay, from the DM side, you must make it clear by dropping like 3 or 4 ways or something. If that's the way you want the players to eventually choose, or you want to leave it really open for them so it's a choice that they could make by doing something particular, then that's where I would say that you want to definitely put a few of those in, or do a few mentions. Maybe they'd start learning things about the villain in question that make them think, well, this happened and this happened. I could see that being, if they start empathizing at all, or sympathizing or empathizing with the villain, that's a good start towards having it be where they could kind of turn them around. Because if they start seeing them from their perspective, they can kind of try and bring them back. And if it's something if it's a problem that they can fix, I mean, yeah, there's the revenge and love thing, but there's also a ton of other, like you said, like put those aside and try and think of something else. There is a ton of different ways that is viable for interesting villain stories for what they've done. Okay, let's take the cursed artifact. That's another kind of big one where you had like a holy paladin, or you had like a hero, and they've been corrupted by something. Whether it's maybe they were brought back to life, and it was a warlock patron pact with some kind of fiendish entity or otherworldly being that's making them do kind of weird, questionable things, and then it starts twisting them down the road, and it's like, well, maybe they start even questioning, am I even still me? Am I the hero that was brought back, or am I something else inhabiting the hero? So they might have like this existential crisis about what they really are, especially because death is like a big deal. Even in a world where you can that's a big deal.
I consider death a reasonably big deal.
Yeah,
I'm not into it.
Even when you can get brought back, it's not standard to be brought back. So that is like a big life-changing experience, and that can really alter a person's perspective. And maybe they even think, I mean, if they were, unless it was like a super resurrection power or something like that, they're probably coming back a little bit damaged, a little bit wary. Like they still feel the scar of the wound from where they were hurt or something. Like those kind of things that stick with them. They still remember the experience probably. So that's like a big traumatic thing that you've been killed and come back. And if you're brought back by something that's kind of twisting you in different directions, that can be an easy villain that people say, well, he was this, what happened to him? And maybe the players don't know it's the item. Maybe the players don't know it's the entity, because those aren't visible, or at least they're not visible. They're not overt signs of evil, because you don't know that he has a warlock pact. You don't know that that sword is actually cursed rather than some kind of hero's weapon. Or maybe something happened where somebody else, a true villain, empowered the sword with some kind of thing that is affecting the hero. So you've got the situation, and once he's defeated, it's like, well, now you're mine. You're my minion. So there's those kind of elements. The corrupted hero, I think, is a good villain that is an easy in if this is like your first time trying to get the players to flip the villain, because it's someone that already started as good.
And if you'd like a super easy corrupted hero, this is one I used for one of my campaigns. The players try and save a unicorn. So this hag has tied up a unicorn, and she's doing all kinds of horrible stuff with unicorn blood. Your first adventures are going to be to try and save the unicorn. You don't save the unicorn and it dies. And your players might get a bit too much of the fluffy bunny feeling out of all of this. But that's okay, because things get super messed up super fast. So the players try and save the unicorn, and the unicorn dies, regardless of how things play out. Dead unicorn. So as the players are trying to decide what to do, usually like two of the groups that I've had run into this, they tried to bury the unicorn, or the other group tried to burn it. So when they decide to do this, I have this priest come across them, and the priest, talks to them and sympathizes with them. And it's like, well, it doesn't have to die. What if I brought it back? We could keep the unicorn alive. And I've never seen a group not hop on that opportunity just as quick as you can spit. So he brings it back. He offers to return it to life. But when he returns it to life, he returns it to life with reincarnate rather than resurrection. Oh. And when it comes back, it remembers being a unicorn, but now it's a human. And it hates the fact that it was brought back, because it hates being a human. It hates not being this pure creature that it used to be. And it doesn't have the kind of the immortality that went with being a unicorn or anything like that. So you actually have the players make their own villain. And this human who's just this, like, doesn't know how to walk, can't figure out what to do with himself. This character ends up being a really horrible person to the players later on. So there you go. Unicorn, players save it, players bring it back to life. Unicorn hates players for bringing it back to life. Villain.
I mean, I used to have virgin maidens hang out with me, and I used to poop rainbow ice cream, but now look at me.
Exactly. Like, he's just super angsty teenager, absolutely doesn't want to be alive.
And what the hell is this thing on my face?
Mm-hmm.
It's like stubble or zit or something. And there's not enough stuff to brush. And they basically like a person outside their body, having to deal with all the newness, except it's a big downgrade.
Exactly.
To go to a human.
The first evil act I always have the unicorn do is the unicorn's been brought back. And in order to really convey the concept that things have gone horribly wrong, the players are out doing something. And essentially I have this conversion, the resurrection conversion, just happened before their eyes. Basically, the unicorn disappears and a naked guy walks away. And the priest helps him. And so the priest is nursing him back to health. And the players come in, and the reincarnated unicorn has choked the priest to death. And the unicorn's like, I don't know what happened. Yeah, so it gets, like I said, no kids in the room tonight, please. And so things get really, really dark really, really quickly. And all of a sudden their fluffy bunny campaign is like, what is happening? I'm not comfortable.
And they feel bad about just right out striking down the reincarnate unicorn, because it's really it is a unicorn, and they had this happen to them. So I think I would go the not immediate shock. I think he would get angry, then he would get extremely quiet and depressed for a while, and then it's kind of like, once they've come to terms with how much this sucks, being a human instead of being a unicorn, that's when like mean-spirited things start to happen. And it might actually be like the natural magic of the unicorn being corrupted by the human unicorn's desires to basically inflict. This is the inflict harm, basically not the revenge. I'm seeking revenge for against X person. They say, I'm not messed up. The entirety of the world is what's screwed up. So I'm just going to get rid of it.
Precisely. And Factoid does bring up a totally legitimate concern. Factoid said, I'm pretty sure reincarnate keeps alignment the same. And there we go. And Fernando retorted with, life changes alignment. And that really is the case. I don't operate off of the concept that alignments would ever be static or anything like that. They change. And life changes things. And if I'm telling a story, I'll be totally honest, the rule book is not where that's coming from. The rule book, it'll come back when I need it, but when I'm telling the story, it's gone until I need it again. So, okay, yeah. So
Makes perfect sense.
moving on. Now that we've talked about super evil, twisted unicorns.
The poor unicorn.
The poor unicorn.
I feel so sad.
It's the last unicorn. There you go. And we had a couple suggestions, a couple interesting things people were talking about. Someone said something that made me think of Vlad the Impaler. Cameron said, how about a prince or ruler who makes a deal with devils to spare his people? The ruler then justifies evil actions for the good of his people and becomes more selfish to protect his people. And that's absolutely a fantastic approach. I love it. That's great.
And that can also be the slippery slip concept, where once you say, okay, interacting with demons and stuff is on the table because, well, the needs of the many, yada, yada, yada.
Outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah, so when you say, well, they didn't ask for sacrifices at first, and they protected my people, but now I need their protection, and they're only asking for 10. So I can get rid of these people that are criminals, or these people that no one likes, or, debtors. That can be a punishment for debt. You might just disappear forever. And eventually, there's like him and whoever is left could be I guess the extreme. You could come to a kingdom that's kind of collapsed because in the end, he's signed over not only his soul but the soul of the nation.
Right. And I would remind everyone that a villain doesn't necessarily need to be an incredibly dark, well thought out, angst filled Sephiroth. He can be, or she can be, very simplistic. There's lots of room in the world for just an ogre that's having a bad day, or a hill giant that keeps eating the wrong guy's sheep.
Yeah. I mean, that's for some people who are like, monsters are bad, okay, and everyone else is fine. Like, player characters, good. So someone who's getting their sheep eaten, and they're like, all right, we fought a few things. We fought some orcs. Those weren't it. We fought some other things in the woods. We fought some wolves. They weren't it. Well, here's this hill giant. He's like picking his teeth with sheep bones. And they're like, you're destroying the farmer's livelihood. He's like, his family might starve this winter because you're killing his sheep. And if the hill giant's like, whatever, I'm not compensating him or anything like that. Try and take it out of my hide. We'll see how this goes. Could be, that's kind of like, I'm a giant. I don't need to pay attention to little people.
And I have had a few GMs talk to me about having trouble. They one of the things I talked to someone about was that they hated the fact they felt like the only thing they got to role play were like townsfolk or anything like that. And in this specific hill giant example, what if the hill giant is a sheep herder and has his own sheep, and the players show up and he's clearly been eating sheep,
but he also has like a stockpile of them,
right?
And they're not necessarily all the farmers. He's like taking the farmer stuff, grown a herd from that,
right? So there's plenty of fee fi fo fum. Thank you, John Gleeman. There's plenty of opportunities where you could role play a hill giant with your players. Or one of my favorite things to role play, I'm sure a lot of GMs probably love this, is getting to role play a dragon, especially when you're this super ancient dragon and all the players are second level. I love that opportunity because I know the players, unless they have a death wish, are not going to charge in throwing slings and magic missiles at it. They're going to be like, Mr. Dragon, sir.
What do we have to say to not be eaten right now?
Exactly.
We'll do it.
The giant was framed by a toothpick salesman.
A giant toothpick salesman. It's like, I've got these sheep bone. They're the best thing. There's a little handle on the nub on the end, and you can sharpen it really nice. I'm like, oh, these are wonderful.
Dubba said, don't all great villains have some great tragedy that fuels them? No. Zorg had no tragedy that fueled him. He was just greedy and mean.
So there's villains that are shaped by things around, like tragedy, but then there's also villains that come about. I guess they would be just more, let's say we could call them antagonists. They're like villainy light in a lot of ways. They might do terrible things, but they're they're looking at it from the perspective of, I just have a different idea on how the world should work, and I might even follow the laws. But
Right.
you're against what the player characters want to have happen in the world, or you're just like a scummy person overall. I mean, you might be you might be a merchant who uses all of his political power to manipulate a government to go to war. Technically, hasn't broken any laws. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's ways of doing it. He just becomes friends with the nobles, takes them out to parties. They like him. So when he says, hey, you know, I've had terrible business over XYZ place. They've robbed me. They do all this kind of stuff over in these other lands. If they were under your control and your jurisdiction, I bet it would be less lawless. And he tells that to 10, 15 nobles and starts to get in with the higher ups and stuff like that. And basically, he's crafting a narrative that he propaganda, basically, to start a fight. And he, aside from lying to nobles, unless that's a law, I mean, like most PCs will be like, I've lied to a couple nobles here and there. That doesn't make me mad, right? So, I mean, lying to nobles, I would not say, it might be literally against the law, but it's not something the PCs would identify with. Oh, yeah, that's totally wrong to do, is lie to people in power.
Mm-hmm.
So, eventually, there's a whole war fought of it, and yes, people die, but he didn't directly kill them. He just set up the circumstance for which a fight broke out. And eventually, the nobles and the king have their own reasons for going to war.
I vote he's evil.
Oh, he is definitely a bad person. But he is not that, like, fiend on the shoulder kind of lich queen kind of evil. It's a different type. It's a type that you're super scummy and your actions have led to people dying, but you're not sitting there stabbing them.
Ed does everything. Can you have a lawful good paladin of conquest for like tier be a villain? And I absolutely agree with the idea that let's give a simple example. Me and Nate are tribal people, and we live out in some nice jungle area. We've lived out here for a really long time. This is where our ancestors and our ancestors' ancestors have lived. And we just hunt whatever we want. But the emperor in the neighboring kingdom declared that a certain kind of deer or monkey or something is like sacred to the religion he believes in. So a paladin who's upholding that religion is marching through the woods and sees Nate and I gutting one.
Choom, choom. Yep, cutting it
paladin, yeah, we're not doing anything evil. We're feeding our families. But the paladin is probably going to whip out his blade and be like, here's the deal. You're going to prison, or I'm going to, cut you down right here. So you could absolutely use totally lawful good character as an evil character. It's to the tribe, he's evil. To the paladin, the tribe's doing something evil, or at least needs to be educated. So there's tons and tons of ways to interpret this and generate conflict that your party can really get into.
And if you do stuff like that, that's where you want to set up a few things that are going to kind of push your player characters and your players towards discussion with somebody rather than just reach for the sword. Because in like that moral gray, like, well, is the paladin right for enforcing the law, or is the law works for everybody else? Because maybe if everybody at the kingdom decided to hunt these things for food, maybe they taste really good. If everyone in the kingdom decided to hunt these things for food, they'd be gone. So that could be considered, especially if you're like a fey paladin or something.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at this and like, well, that's an imbalance in nature, so we should make laws to protect this thing. But why is then the paladin who's obeying laws going to say, oh, well, these people, it's okay for them to hunt it? And if there's a discussion that goes on with that paladin and those two characters, that's something that you can kind of either you can find a new way to go rather than it doesn't, when you have the discussion happen and you kind of have your player characters and your players understand as the person shoving all these villains in their face, you don't necessarily see that it's either a yes or no answer. There might be a third way to go that the players can dialogue through with these people. The paladin can dialogue through with these people to have a new way to go and solve the problem. And that's, I think, where you get the really cool ideas and directions. I mean, there's some things where I've been like totally blown away by what my characters, the player characters decide to do. And I go, wow, I didn't think about that, and that's actually a better storyline than I had. So it's this storyline now, and
That's what's happening now.
I have changed. I have changed motivations for enemies. I have changed whole sections. I've like rewritten days worth of playing of campaign just because I was like, all right, they're going in this new direction, not literally a new direction, but a new way of trying to solve this problem. So I'm like, I think I'm going to make this a little easier for them to solve it that way, because I want to see that happen. I want to see if they can make it happen, which is a better storyline than the original yes no answer I had for the villain.
And you know, Nate brings up a very interesting point and an interesting solution. Murder hobos are real. Okay. Even if you play with a group of players that are fairly role play heavy, I bet one of them is still a murder hobo.
The nasty truth is we all are kind of, in one way or another. We've got a little bit of murder hobo in us.
Giving your players sometimes a better reward than a magic item or a box of experience or whatever is giving your players the opportunity to feel clever and feel inspired and feel, man, cool. I think there's something else going on here. I want to talk to the person. And I've been able to disarm, so to speak, murder hobos in the past and start to get them to embrace role play. So there are those opportunities to try and change how your players are perceiving or interacting with the world. Voltaire had a good question for you here. How would you guys make a druidic villain, one that destroys nature itself? I think there's lots of directions you could go with that.
Okay, yeah. They may see themselves as a certain aspect of nature, the act of the earthquake, the tsunami, the apocalyptic natural disaster. They might see themselves embodying that. Mm-hmm. That could be a way to go.
Poison ivy?
Yeah, something like that. That's a way to go. I mean, there's things in nature that are destructive, but things that destroy nature. Well, I mean, he could see it as a forest fire that stops large fires from happening later on. It's like necessary pain that must be gone through. He could be taking a really highbrow concept, like overarching natural philosophy, that to a person that's only looking at what's happening right now, you lit the forest on fire. You're a bad person. All these things are dying. People are losing their homes. All this stuff's happening. Mm-hmm. But I mean, what is it? There's something in forestry called controlled burning, where they'll go around every couple of years. I don't really know the frequency, but they burn the brush, and it burn. You know, they watch it and they burn it in such a way that it naturally clears out, so it doesn't build up, and then on dry season happens, and the whole hundreds of thousands of acres go.
And you could there are tons and tons of directions you could go with an evil druid. Voltaire clarifies and said, I was thinking a druid that no longer believes in nature and wants to revert back to the world to a more chaotic era. Or so there's tons of directions you could go with this. You could go with a druid who somehow firmly believes that all of the world should be a desert. And this is a druid of the desert. And so whenever they go to areas that are rich in life or anything like that, maybe they just salt the earth just to prevent things from growing. Like maybe that's what they feel like the world would be peaceful if it was a desert, because nobody could live there and then there wouldn't be wars anymore. Like you can just any direction you want to go with that.
Only the truly strong things and resourceful things survive in a desert. And it could be kind of like only the strong survive mentality driving that. And maybe that's just the philosophy of the person. Maybe they live through some like really great hardship that's kind of given them that general backdrop of philosophy, and they haven't necessarily turned. They've just always kind of been, oh, well, maybe, or they've gotten to this point. They say, well, the strong survive in nature. So blah, blah, blah. And then they go for maybe 10 levels of druid, and then they say something happens, and they're like, you know what? I don't think the weak deserve to live. And I want to make a world in which the weak can't live. Because I would think that would be kind of like a perfect balance between hardship and only. Basically, that would make what he thinks is a philosophy come true. So then his ideals would line up with what the world becomes.
And there are tons. I'm seeing a bunch of like lines of logic dropped in, but there are tons of clearly faulty lines of reason that you could just insert weird logic here and end up with a villain. So that would be a super super easy way to do that.
Oh, well, ideally, okay. So let's say you're a person that follows the rules. You're lawful to a certain extent, or you're at least, you'll follow the rules, even if it's just because you don't want to be punished. So you're either lawful or you're a type of person that will follow the whatever rules are going on. So you come with that mindset, but if you're a person that goes off one side or the other, I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. Sorry, but if you're coming from that mindset and you're like, this is how the world works. People follow the rules even if they don't like them. It's just the way it goes. And when you see someone come around that's not doing that, they're like the outlier. That can actually make you angry that someone is being not villainous necessarily, but outside the norm. And you'll either push them away, driving them further towards like, well, okay, so you guys think I'm a rebel. Well, I don't like you guys because you're treating me like crap. So whatever, I'll do whatever the heck I want. And then eventually someone's starting to fight with him because he's a deadbeat, vagabond kind of guy that's traveling around causing trouble.
Exactly. And Kyle Ellis brings up he says something really cool that brings up a bunch of other really good concepts as far as sometimes I just don't have good ideas and my villains come from other places.
Okay, so
this is Zorg, Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, right? Okay.
So let's go back. So I've got this thing here. I would say just roll on this chart and all your problems may go away, because what will happen here is you roll on this chart and you'll say to yourself, I don't like this, what I rolled. I would much rather them be, oh, they're a villain because they're obsessed with immortality because of XYZ thing, or
lots of emperors have been obsessed with immortality.
Yeah, lots. Or they find an ancient artifact, or they want to obtain it because it's going to fix all the problems they've had previously in their life. Hey, maybe they think this world's junk. They've had a whole bunch of bad things happen to them. We're like, I don't care what happens to this world. I want the artifact that gates me to another place, and I'm going to smash the gate. And I'm going to be the only one from this junk world that happens to go into the new one, because the new one's going to be better and sunshine, rainbows, lolly drops, and whatever.
False utopia, like the villains from the most recent Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah, you have this false thought that, this incorrect assumption that you're going to, when you do it, it might not have worked every other time someone made a tyranny, but you're going to do it in such a way that you're good to the people while you're tyrannical. That's just something that there's some people that think they're good enough to do it, make it happen. It didn't work out nicely when these 10 people have tried it throughout the centuries, but I'm different.
Exactly.
And that's a common thought. That is not out of the bounds. Like, so anybody that's got that, give them the means and they might be a villain, because they'll take it in that direction, and then they'll become a tyrant. And they're thinking, oh, I'm doing this really for the people, when they're not. I'm doing this really for the people, so whatever means to get to the spot that I can then enact my justice upon the lands, that will eliminate suffering, and fluffy bunnies will hop everywhere, and everybody will peace, love, and happiness if we just got rid of all the things that make society run. So anyway.
Well, Kyle Ellis had brought up Namor and Aquaman, especially, I think, Namor in his first appearance attacks a battleship or something. Kyle will know. Kyle knows he attacks like a battleship or something, is because he doesn't like the surface people and what they're doing. But he brings up a really cool concept. When I can't think of a villain, I crack a comic book open. There are so many comic books available and so many concepts for villains available. If you gently reskin something, your players may never know. So there's absolutely, I remember I was trying to role play this super intoxicated, lecherous elf. All the players were on an airship and they're flying across this thing. And the elf was talking, and he had a bit of a thing going, and he was trying this. I sound like pudding pops. there's a pudding pouch, kids. But and so he was this crazy lecherous elf, but it ended up coming off as like a Jack Sparrow kind of thing. But you can use it doesn't matter if the players make the association. Use your favorite villains that you thought were awesome or fun or crazy. Yeah, I was trying to. It's Jack Sparrow. You end up. He was just supposed to be a lecherous elf, but that's how it came off. Here we go. Fernando brings up something almost funny. The school ground bully. He says, "How about low grade villains?" Like it's a very macho statement. Like some guy that wants to seduce your girl.
Well, wait, Gaston.
If she loves you, she's probably good. You can let her handle it. Like, I'm just saying.
Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, exactly.
Until the moment he's like, yeah, let's make up the stuff and go fight this guy, and I'm totally willing to kill this person to get this lady. Up until that point, you're like, man, he's just a jackass. He's a guy that, like, somebody punch this man in the face. But for the whole show, he's pretty much that guy until the end. And you're like, okay, he stepped over the line. So beside being like the schoolyard bully version of,
right,
I call them, I don't know, like I'd be like, those are kind of antagonists to the party, or they're antagonists to player characters, rather than like, but when they step over that line, like they'll beat you up in an alleyway and leave you for dead because you've just insulted them you insulted their intelligence for the last time, and they're not going to have any of it. So they get a bunch of their friends together and totally beat you to a pulp in the alley, leave you for dead, and you live through it because you're heroes.
I have an antagonist villain that I used for. I ran an adventure for a children's table at a convention. So these kids are anywhere from like 10 to 15 years old. So the adventure is called Kobold Riot, and basically 100 kobolds are. A farmer shows up and he says, "We barely escaped their attack, and they burned my farm down." And the players can't evacuate the town quick enough, and the kobolds are going to be here any minute. So the players have to work with the townsfolk in order to build like defenses. And you'd be amazed how many 10-year-olds are like, "Can you burn alcohol? Can we use a barrel of flaming oil?" Like that comes up immediately. But so the villain essentially in this is a naysayer. Just one of the townsfolk that's a super big coward and is constantly nitpicking at the players and say, "Well, there's no way we'll survive. We should run. If just we leave, we could make it out of town. Let the villagers fend for themselves. I have money." So you have this super, super cowardly, gnarly dude that just wants to go out a back way. And the kids never go for it. They're like, "That guy's horrible. I don't like him." We ignore him and do our stuff.
The Lord Mayor's assistant in the third Hobbit movie, who is just like cowardly, always blames somebody, always places blame on somebody else. "Oh, I was telling the Lord Mayor to save these people. Do this. Don't just take the gold and leave." Even the whole time he's running away with the mayor. So it's kind of like this whole situation. And even then, when there's like, when he could step up and actually do something and try and like defend other people, he's out hiding, and then he runs away with some money. Even after he gets saved, he runs away with some money, and it's just like, yeah, you just can't fix that level of like unheroic. It's like you're a villain through unheroicness. You're like doing everything opposite to what the player characters think a person in your situation should be doing.
Exactly. And if you want to see really heroic role playing, watch a bunch of little kids try and save each other from a kobold horde. It is like heartwarming how heroic they can be, jumping in the way of bullets and everything.
Oh, that sounds cool.
I guess arrows and stuff. Kyle Ellis, thank you, sir. Namor attacked an oil tanker in his first one-off appearance, known as Khazor the Submariner, for defiling the ocean with a spill.
Now, wouldn't that make it in danger of spilling oil if you attack an oil rig? I mean, an oil...
Maybe it already spilled the oil. I honestly don't remember. I just remember him shooting out of the water and being, because it was an older comic book, so it was like, I'm the Submariner and I need to introduce my character.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have a tirade when I come out of the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The you're doing bad things and I'll tell you all about it right now.
James Leslie, I had a Tinker Gnome villain that no one took seriously until he came out in mechanized Iron Golem armor.
Yes. And
yeah, that's horrifying.
did he then, when he revealed his plot in the mechanized power armor, did he then say, I have set up explosives everywhere? The town is doomed.
Jareth the Goblin King from Labyrinth. You remind me of the babe.
Yeah.
The babe with the power.
Yeah, he's obviously in the wrong. But he's also got these qualities about him that make you say, well, how could I turn this around? You know, like, you're kind of thinking of a way to just not off this guy. Because then it's like, okay, well, she did ask for the child.
Dude, he was super messed up. He abducted a baby. On like a list of evil things, that's an 11 for me.
Okay,
like
somebody requested it, and it was the person in charge of the child.
That doesn't make it better.
Yeah, but there's like elven rules. Like, I feel like, yeah, he's the Goblin King, but he's more like Fey. Do you know what I mean? Like a Fey goblin.
What?
All right, so there's...
Are you justifying baby theft?
No, there's the rules of the natural world, and then there's Fey law. Fey law makes... Basically, I think... Oh, this is a good point to bring up. Fey law is great for villainy, because they have a different way of looking at the world, and they have different rules. And there are a lot of the ways that you can think about this, especially... Now, this isn't canon. I'm just saying what I like about using Fey is that having those weird rules. And those things that... Well, they're not just strange to be strange, but they're strange to normal people because you're not a Fey being with, like, all these, like, weird logic loops of things. And I had a mud... she's not a villain, but she was... they had to... Basically, the players had to get through this challenge, and this challenge was the Mud Mother. Madrula. And... she was a Fey being that was elemental earth in nature. So she was literally of the mud. So this muddy area, like peat bog kind of places, was her domain. So she was there, and there was like a wrestling pit, like a mud pit. And she was this like 7-foot tall elf, basically, made out of mud, is what she looked like. And she was like, well, I'll tell you things if you play a game with me. And she said... There's 3 rules that I'll let you know about. And she tells them about it. And she had a ring of mud. And I made the map. And the players looked at it and they said, okay. She's like, well, enter the ring. And then what will happen is we'll fight. And whoever wins, I'll answer questions for. So there was nothing about like killing her or what if she could kill you in return. There was nothing of that, none of that discussed. And in fact, she didn't answer any questions on the rules. So once they agreed by being within the ring, and the ring she was talking about was not the mud ring, but it was the ring of mud mephits that the players didn't see because they were in the ground. And that's the ring she spoke of. It's not her fault. The players didn't have the ability to see it. So that's kind of like... That could be a really jerk move to pull on the players as a villain. That you're like, I'm totally within my bounds to mislead you. I've told you what's true. It's not my problem. You can't see the truth. So that's a way I played her. So she was an antagonist. She wasn't villainous because she wasn't an evil actor. But as soon as one of the players, the last player in line, stepped forward a few feet, she's like, excellent. Let's start the game. And then you see all the mud mephits come out of the ground. An unbeatable amount of mud mephits. So it was kind of like, all right, we're playing this game because these things will murder us.
So we had a few different things in. Fernando has an interesting question, which I want to grab some of the comments. But Fernando had an interesting question. How do you bring awesome monologues as the villain? Which we will hit in just a second. But Logan Johnson had a really cool idea for a villain, cool enough that I think it deserves to be pointed out. A corrupt jester for a royal court who uses his charisma and songs to subconsciously influence the king. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that has
it's the old evil
trope.
method. The evil method on the shoulder, you know what I mean? Like the influenced good king who's now been swayed to evil. Yeah. Okay, so villain monologues. The ability, first you have to have a party that will allow you to monologue. That's rule 1.
Number 1, yes. And I think a good way to do that is for the players to know that unless you've got something very particular set up, like they're gonna pull a lever at the end of the monologue, so somebody ends up like, oh wait, I don't want him to do anything, so I'm gonna stop him before he's done talking. So that's kind of like metagaming a lot, especially if unless you're like, oh wait, this guy's walking around, he's touching things, is he like starting a trap? So there's a few ways to do it from my perspective. First off, you get them used to villains and antagonists talking to them. Because if the first thing they do is, I've gotten into this guy's stronghold, so as soon as I see him, I'm going to shoot an arrow at him, or I'm going to cast a spell, or I'm going to get the drop on him.
Right. And the more they hate that person, the more you've developed them as a super bad person, like a baby stealer, the more likely it is that he's going to get a lightning bolt in the teeth before he ever says anything.
Yeah, so if you get your villain kind of riding the wave of, we should talk to him and try and find out if this is a misunderstanding, to, yeah, he's a bad person. If you've got him kind of wiggling in between those two, the players are more likely to talk to that person. Because they're like, we want to actually figure out if we're supposed to off this guy or not.
Oh.
Just for our own peace of mind. We want to make sure we're not just murdering somebody who's misunderstood.
Tim Curry, the Lord of Darkness.
Voltaire Rewind. It's baby borrowing.
It's not baby borrowing. That's messed up. You steal a baby, you are instantly evil. Done.
She got him back.
Cross the line.
Right?
Yeah. I don't think the end result justifies the middle ground where he was holding someone else's child that he kidnapped. That's messed up. I find no ways to sell that.
Get gifted a baby by somebody, and later you're the thief right there. Poor guy. Okay, so you were going to say?
I have no idea. Everything comes flying through. If you don't grab it when it's there, it's gone.
Larry Anglin, that is an interesting suggestion. Whole person, mass, mass whole person, no save. You can probably pull that off once.
Yeah.
And then it's super annoying the rest of the times if you use it. So I would say if the person is a manipulator of people or an enchanter and the people don't take any precautions.
Or a bloodbender.
Who happens to be evil. Not all bloodbenders are bad. So a person that can do that type of power, or maybe they have an item, a scroll of something that they've filched or drug out of some tomb, and they use it. So basically, if you use it, make sure the characters understand he can't do that again. Or it is an actual ability he has, and you've led up to them knowing that, and since they didn't take any precautions, they're just out of luck when it happens. But I would not use that. That's pretty heavy-handed from my perspective. So I would say use that very sparingly, and have it be that he just talks. Don't have it be that there's like a combat advantage gained by him, or he's able to do XYZ thing, because then the players will feel like you just kind of said, yeah, whatever you were doing is done. It's not happening.
I would say there's really two aspects to getting to deliver a good monologue. One, if your players are super accustomed to role-playing things, and this takes development with some groups, but if they're accustomed to role-playing things, then they're probably going to let the guy monologue so that they can talk back, because your players have their own little monologues that they want to say to the guy. The other thing is, if you've given a compelling story, the bad guy is probably going to give them information that they want to know, climax information what is going on? Why are these things happening? What is going on here? The bad guy's going to deliver that information in his monologue. They're going to stand and listen because they literally want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, he's probably not going to like it if he's dead or serially injured. He probably won't talk after that. So we probably might just want to let him spill the beans, so to say.
Precisely.
Another thing with that is seed the adventure with the next big adventure. Even if it's a few of them and you're like, there's 3 ways these players could go, the player characters could go. So I'm going to say I'm giving them 3 hooks. Not big enough that it distracts them from completing the quest they're currently on, but big enough that they understand something else is going on here. In fact, maybe we should ask that guy whose stronghold this is, or who controls this region, who we're going to go fight or deal with or talk something out or get something back from him. Hey, maybe it's like he stole dragon eggs and he hasn't done any crazy experiments on them. He wants to, but he hasn't. So he could, in fact, return the dragon eggs and everything's good? Maybe question mark? Especially if he then says, well, I've got information on XYZ thing. Maybe if I just give them this information, it'll be like kind of pay for their troubles of coming here to take these dragon eggs back. The players might still kill him. The player characters might still kill him, but
the players are going to kill him.
Got that option in there.
I always just assume they're gonna murder the guy.
Yeah, assume that no matter what you do, your players will be upset you didn't let them kill a villain, or they might just kill him. You got to have that in the back of your mind that this guy might have to be a throwaway, that you then have somebody else be the real threat behind the thing. So, that's a big point. When you have a villain and you decide to wiggle him in front of the player characters' faces, be prepared for that villain to be caught, killed, bad things to happen to them, tortured to reveal plots, all kinds of stuff. That could happen.
Oh, and the other side of that, Logan Johnson had a question in chat about this specifically. He said, I don't know if you guys already talked about it, but what about the topic of villains getting away and coming back stronger? I'm all for character development for NPCs, but what about the villain getting away? Yeah. Now, this is a dangerous line to walk. If you cheese the escape of your villain, poof, a cloud of smoke and he's gone, or some other BS method of getting the villain away, your players are going to feel cheated.
Cheat it like you just mass held person with no save.
Precisely.
That's the level. So if you've ever been a player character who the villain has cheesily gotten away, and it was cheesy, it wasn't like, well, you guys just don't know. He was able to get away.
Yeah.
And that can be as simple as, he should be out of hit points and he got hit a couple more times, but he's running away. And then he magically has the ability to teleport even though he's like a fighter, battle master or something. There's like all these different scenarios in which that is going to feel off-putting to the player characters and the players in general. Right. And that's kind of like a danger zone. At that point, if you're not certain that the villain can get away, don't make it happen. That's my suggestion. I mean, you can do whatever you want in your game, but I'm going to say, as a player character, it's annoying. It's really freaking annoying. And right. It kind of breaks immersion because they're following the rules, and the player that the villain you have obviously isn't.
Right. And this is the same as total party kills. If your players get into a scenario where it looks to them like they're probably going to die, and you didn't plan anything for this and they're probably going to die, let the party die. Worse than the feelings they'll have about dying is the feeling that you waved a magic wand and just said, GM lets the players lives. It's an incredibly terrible feeling to feel like the GM had to save you. So the villain is exactly the same example. If the villain is out there in the world and you're like, I'm the big bad guy, the BBG, and I'm hanging out on my throne in my throne room and I'm monologuing to the players, there is no exit from the throne room except the doors the players came in, and I somehow vanish. They better be able to find the trap door I just went out. They better have a very good reason why my guy managed to get away. a very good reason. If you don't give them that reason, you break immersion and you cheat your players. And it's not a good feeling. It's miserable.
Logan Johnson says, I only had the cheesy escape once, but he was a cleric of madness that is a prophet of Kyber, and I played it off as he was granted this one blessing. I'm like, okay, that could be something. And if he shouts, my lord Kyber, save me, and he's like, it'd be even better if they know he's crazy. Mm-hmm. And he's shouting for something to save him, and it actually does, and he's like gone. Or if it's not, or if like a whole bunch of circumstances happen where like the PCs have the most terrible luck ever while they're chasing this guy. Like, oh, a cart gets in front of you. Oh, this happens, this happens, this happens. And then suddenly there's just a giant pit in the floor and you fall into it. At that point, you're just like, all right, something has made it possible that this is not occurring. And if it's a deity, that's a passable thing. But you do that 5 or 6, you do that 5 or the same thing with the traps. You put too many traps down, they're always ready for traps. If you break immersion or get close to it too many times, they're like, are we ever going to just be able to off one of these guys early on? And my suggestion is sometimes you should just let them off them, because you know what? That could just be the cult second in command. That could be, oh, now I'm going to think of the guy who's really in charge. I wanted this guy to be the big bad at the end, but they just offed him. So he could be the guy that wasn't really in charge. He's the general, or he's just like a lower tier guy that thought himself bigger than he was. So he decided to do his, I've got power and I'm going to shove it around and show people how awesome I am. You could also say, well, he comes back with warlock levels later. That's a good way to do it. And that is, especially if he gets further into the evil mindset for the player characters, like, oh man, he just went down even further, or he just raised himself as more of a villain because now he made a pact with a fiend or a dark god or something.
You could have one of his super loyal generals run by, whack his hand off, and just take off. Dude's gonna res him just like you would any other player character. Like there are lots of
stab him with a blade and like maybe or like cut his ear or something as he goes by, grab it and then go.
And just build.
That was very strange.
Yeah. But at least then you can sell it to the players in a way they'll believe. And I'll be the first to admit, I am totally I have been a victim of player choice before. And if you're running your big bad and your players took him out and you were like, I can't believe that happened. I am gutted. I can't believe they killed my big bad.
Like, had such plans for his future. He had a future at least 6 more episodes.
If you need to say to your players, guys, next week, I need that day off. You broke my game. I need to fix it now. He wasn't supposed to die. Good job killing him, but he's murdered now, and now I need to fix things. So give me an extra week to build. Just tell your players you need some time off to fix it. There's nothing wrong with taking a break to try and reroute the story. Imagine how the players feel if they all die. This is your character, and now he's dead.
Getting back to the not waving the magic wand and saving the players, you can. There's a few. I'm sure Nerdarchy's done videos on this. Alternate things when you TPK people, but there's ways you could do it. Maybe it was a dream sequence.
Oh,
that can work. At least, that can work once. You could all end up in the afterlife. And the afterlife is not what you thought it was. It's more like purgatorial than, oh, you either go to like your deity or you go to a nice happy hunting ground or whatever. Maybe it is happy hunting ground, but they left out that it's happy for whoever the hunter is. And you are prey until you prove otherwise. It could be like, that sounds like Fey rules to me. So if a particular person, that's where you are. So, I mean, otherwise you're kind of, if you kill there's this thing where you feel like I would risk the breaking of immersion, not to save the party, but for having them be able to come back. Rather than be like, all right, all the party's dead, we're just going to end this, because otherwise, how are you going to pick it up? How are you going to remember what your character knew, the old one to the new one? What clues did they not find? How are they finding the same type of clues to get to this one conclusion and find this place?
I have had players come back, but usually I monkey paw it if they really messed up bad, and I'm allowing the player characters to come back. I usually do something mildly wicked to them,
Like they're all undead.
I'm like, you're all undead. You're all the reincarnate. I love the reincarnation spell. You all came back with reincarnation. Congratulations. You're a guy now. You're a girl now. You're an elf and you used to be a dwarf. Like, have some fun with it.
Oh, reincarnation would be really good.
Yeah, sometimes people, and you're a cow. I don't know what to tell you. Roll a class. Do something with it.
Well, we could always have a really good dinner to send you off, and then you could reincarnate again.
All right, so
I don't think there's limits on it.
We are right now just a reincarnate vending machine.
Just saying.
There's a deity somewhere that's like, ugh.
I mean, the druid might be angry.
Yeah.
And the deity might be angry.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we have used the bulk of our time, but we have not talked about evil players and evil campaigns.
We talked a little bit about evil players.
I feel like we could really
not enough, yeah.
we could deep dive into that a little bit.
We could also talk about villains probably for another 2 hours. So.
Oh yeah, I could do another 5 or 6 hours of evil villains. What are you doing, camera?
Oh, James Leslie says the Curse of Strahd has a mechanic on the player's guide to fix early TPKs up to level 5 where you can come back if you accept a Dark Blessing.
Yeah, but that's because Ravenloft is evil. And if I ever get sent back there again by the mists, I'm just going to kill that character as soon as I get there. Oh, is this Ravenloft? Shink. All right, I'm done.
You rise again.
Yeah, exactly.
Only this time you're more down the dark path than you were before. This is... You do it 2 more times, you're like, okay, this is not ending well. I've already got scales and black eyes.
I loved my character. I knew nothing about Ravenloft, and the GM's like, yeah, we're going to do an adventure in Ravenloft. We get sucked in by the mists. Oh,
that's rough, man, not knowing what you're getting into.
I didn't know, dude. Goblin with a Y. Lower your charisma permanently. Not good. Okay, so evil characters. Now, there's a few different directions to go in this. Someone had mentioned earlier in chat the idea of the players being framed, and the players aren't evil, but they're being treated as villains by law or by other good aligned people because they're perceived as villains.
That's a good way to start, because that can easily be... You get to a point where you're basically you're outlaws at that point, because what happens is guards show up. We want to take you in for questioning, and you're expected to have done something treasonous. Well, fantasy world is probably a little bit different than medieval style stuff, but they're going to try and squeeze that out of you one way or the other. Especially if they need a scapegoat. If some higher up is actually the treasonous person, then they need to cover it up by pointing to you guys, and you just happen to be the unlucky people that were there at the wrong time. So I would say that, yeah, it's probably pretty easy to get on the other side of the law in certain kingdoms. And then you're fighting guards, which puts you further on the other side of the law. You might end up killing some of them just in self-defense. And you're saying, hey, I'm doing this in self-defense. I know if they capture me, they're probably going to torture and kill me. So I'm not down with following the rules right now, because it means
right. And the guards are just normal Joes. Like, these are normal people that don't want the fate that's come across them. And
they were told to go get these people. They're wrongdoers.
Exactly.
They've got to be taken in for questioning. They probably have done treasonous things. They may even be spies. And you're like, okay, I'm doing my due diligence. I'm doing my duty as a townsperson. I mean, spies could infiltrate, and they could figure out where the weaknesses in our walls.
The witch hunt.
All these people could end up dying because I decided, well, I mean, I didn't know they did anything bad, so I mean, they didn't look like treasonous people to me or spies. At that point, you don't make those kind of decisions, because it could rest on your head then, and your head could come off later. If you decide, I'm going to let these people go that are suspected of treason or suspected of espionage. That's a bad spot to be in, especially as a common non-heroic adventure type person. You're just like, I've got other obligations like family, friends, this town, people live. So if you're actually, I can't risk that you are actually a spy and letting you go. And then you kill them because they're tenacious for you, and you can't banish them all up and run away because there's more coming. So you got to book it out of there. Some of them die, so now you've got guards' deaths on your head, and you didn't want that to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen, but it happened.
Yeah, I guess the other direction we can go with this, other than just framed or good people put in a bad situation, the other direction we can go with this is players who would like to be evil. These are players who want to do something evil. I'll be totally honest, I'm not a fan. As a GM, I like the good guys to win. I like the players to be heroic. I like to do the right thing. I have had players who are constantly slipping me notes. They're stealing things from each other. I had one player who put a sleeping tonic in every single other player's stuff, knocked them out, and then looted them and left. And I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you, dude. Yeah. The adventure is going to be you telling me you're running and me talking to the party about catching you so they can get their stuff back.
Yeah.
Like this
or you get away and they never see their stuff again. Roll up a new character. Congratulations, you won D&D. Roll up a new character.
Exactly.
Blink,
exactly. Evil campaigns can be incredibly divisive and can create. Thank you, Andrew. Have a good night, buddy. Can create a lot of, they can create a lot of conflict at the tabletop. So I try to avoid doing evil campaigns. It just depends if that's the kind of thing that you guys are super into and you really, really want to do an evil campaign. It usually ends up voicing itself as a power grab. Yeah. I mean, what's your experience?
Okay, full disclosure, I dislike evil campaigns as well. And I really won't run one. But I had a really fantastic one. It was epic level campaign. It was a 3.5. I was a Shadow Death Knight riding a Shadow Dragon.
Oh, God.
A black like half black, half Shadow Dragon. And I was the Death Knight, and I had an army of shadows that lived within me. So whenever I, took out the guards, I would just breathe out a cloud of these shadows that would form into people and fight everybody, drain their strength, and turn them into more shadows. So that was how I went for that, because back in 3.5, if you're a monster, you get the monster stuff, and Death Knights had an army of undead. I just chose them to be shadows, and then I had a secondary one that was an Archmage Beholder. And aside from playing really bizarre, crazy stuff, what was fun about that campaign was we had something called the Overlord, and the Overlord sent us to a planet with a specific design for us to be the shock troop, crazy, near to demigod level power to shape the world. And we found out later that he was actually an evil dark god of war. So he wanted endless war to happen. So we found out that this planet that we were fighting on was kind of into two factions. And it was a back and forth front. He was in both. He was... So we found out later, wow, we've just been kind of spinning our wheels here because he doesn't want the war to end.
Yeah,
he wants it to keep going. So that was kind of I think that we didn't play to the end, but that was kind of the wrap up was we found out. It had to end earlier than it was, but we found out basically that we have just been doing all this stuff for kind of kicks, basically, for power for the Dark God.
I will say that I have seen players in evil campaigns that have they get to kind of have that freeing experience where you can do whatever you want. And I participated in an evil campaign, but I immediately went to a very mechanical way of thinking how to proceed in that campaign. I was given a necklace of fireballs. It's an old AD&D second edition item. And you just rip off a bead from the necklace of fireballs and throw it. It's a fireball. So I was like, we should get soldiers and start taking stuff over because we have all this power. And I have a necklace of fireballs. So we went to a village and I was just hucking fireballs and huts, getting rid of the competition, looted the this huge town, just took everything and then went over to the neighboring kingdom and started hiring soldiers. It is ridiculous how quickly most evil campaigns get out of control.
You just sacked a town and then went over and said, well, I got mercenary money now.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I clearly, if I'm gonna get to be in charge, or if I'm gonna be evil, then this villain, this character I'm playing, his goal is to be in charge of everything.
Oh, so something I left out, the epic level campaign we were playing, one of the main things was we were kind of all bound. This overlord deity, this dark god of war, was our patron in many ways, and we were kind of bound not to fight each other overtly. We could undermine each other and kind of like try and be like the best minion ranking for this deity. But in the end, we weren't just supposed to be like, oh, yeah, all of our machinations is going to involve us killing each other. So we all had
machinations.
we had the common goal thrust upon us, but we also, as players, agreed to deal with that.
Yes.
So that kind of really tamped down on any infighting over infighting. There was like kind of backstabbing a little bit, but it wasn't like, oh, I backstabbed you and I'm killing your character by, enacting all this stuff. So I feel like that's good a lever to pry that kind of issue apart. That they just always kind of like get to the spot where it's like, oh, I'm evil, so I'm just going to be nasty to those people. You can also be a terrible person, be considered evil, and to love people. You could be really bound to the people you're with. So you want to have that common. You got to have the common bond, or you're just going to have infighting, and it's going to degrade into nothing. So if you want that to just occur, and you're just like at the DM eating popcorn, waiting for it, like my popcorn's ready, waiting for this to happen. If that's the game you want to play, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, if you want the game to actually proceed towards a story arc, you're going to have to nip the idea of them infighting and bind them in some way. Maybe it's a necklace that they were gifted to into the service of somebody. They didn't know this is what it does, but this is what it does, and they're gonna have an issue getting it off because it's from, I don't know, an artifact of lordship or something like that produces these things, and if someone willingly puts it on, they're basically like slave collared to this guy.
So another and something I've had to deal with quite a few times actually. Another perspective of evil in your party is Nate's a good character. Actually, no, Nate's the evil character. After talking about his cleric, he's the bad guy here. So
I'm doing the right things.
Nate's playing an evil character. The mighty Hob is a lawful good paladin. Kyle Ellis is a neutral good fighter. And I am a lawful good wizard. So all of us are good characters. And you are the odd one out. You're an evil character. And we're all adventuring in a party together.
Yes.
This is the danger zone as far as, I guess if you're all good friends, it's not that bad. But if these players, as often is the case, don't all know each other super well, you may have just introduced a way to have an actual argument at the tabletop, which is what I've seen a lot of, especially conventions. People don't know each other. They all sit down at the convention table and someone is dead set that their character is evil. And things go south super quick. I don't know. What are your experiences?
And the quoted defense is, "This is what my character would do."
Yes.
And then like, "This is what I would do."
Yeah.
Don't punch people.
Well, exactly. The issue with having one character who has a different alignment than everyone else is you really have to look closely at what this player is trying to get from the game. This always ends up going back to our Dungeons and Dragons or our role play fundamentals. What do you actually want out of this experience? Why do you think it's interesting to play an evil character with a bunch of good aligned, like heroic characters? And what's the end game here? If Nate's evil character thinks he's doing the right thing and that doesn't super directly collide with what the players are trying to do, then okay, all right, that could work. If Nate's character is evil, but giving good a try because he loved someone once and that person was good, now he might be redeeming himself.
And that person might not be around anymore. Maybe it's a love interest, but he still feels a certain connection to them, and these are the people that knew that person. You know what I mean? So maybe they're not going full revenge on the world for my lost love, but they're like, I'm going to try and like scrap together and scrounge together this life as best I can. These people know the stories. These people know us. So even though I was the dark one out of the pair, the darker attitude.
You're your lady love or your handsome lover. That person saw the good in you. You never saw it. You were evil to the core by your own right. But these people were friends of that person, your significant other, and now you want to adventure with them because they knew them, and you want to know them and know what they know about this person that you no longer get to see every day.
Yeah, it's kind of like you get to relive memories by interacting with the people that knew her as well. And so you've going on this guy, well, yeah, but he's still a scoundrel. He's still a right bastard when it comes down to acting out certain ways. And at that point, you're like, all right, well, he's kind of the pain in the butt of the party, but we still have him here. So as long as he doesn't do super overt things like, every once in a while, you might have let a person live that turns up dead later, and he might just think he's protecting your interests. Mm-hmm. Maybe you guys are too soft-hearted, as he thinks.
Exactly.
And the person
we're gonna let him live.
The person that's no longer alive was the one that could always rein that in, and like make him a little more soft-hearted or more a little understanding. And without that person around, he's like, yeah, I'm not letting that person live. They're gonna get offed in an alleyway someplace. And then our secret's safe, or then everybody's protected because that guy won't come back for revenge because he's dead.
Yeah, and so I would say if you're going to have a player that wants to come to the table and bring something that's going to be really against the grain for the rest of the party, I would definitely talk to them before it happens. And even if they're your best friend, you need to make sure that whatever they're bringing to the table is going to be positive, is going to be a good experience for everyone. And maybe it's just interesting role play opportunities, and that will be a good experience for everyone. But with a tabletop of other human beings, not characters, the first thing that needs to be assessed is, are we all going to have fun tonight?
Yeah.
Are we all going to get to have a good time?
No matter what happens. Except
and
if you kill us all in our sleep, we're going to be really mad about it.
I mean, I had a player at a con. He came off as an incredibly nice guy. He said he just wanted to be the cook. So he sat down at a table and we're all having our game. And he started this like argument with one of the other players about what his character would do. And then it became an argument about, well, if you do this, I'll do that. Like this back and forth. Uh-huh. And then it escalated to actual combat. And I just asked him to leave. So I would rather have the entire table have a good time and the remaining players have a good time, right, minus the one person, than have someone there that's going to cause a problem. So if you have someone in your group, if you're playing all evil characters and some dude's like, I want to be a lawful good paladin, that's the same guy you need to talk to. So
yeah, Voltaire Rewind, you come up a good point about the, well, we should just make sure that this villain can't hurt other people again. If the villain repents, do you still kill it? Because if you don't, and then they kill more people later, or still take villainous acts, then the blood's on your hand pretty much. So does that make you evil? And it's like, well, it doesn't make you evil for sparing someone's life. It makes you kind of foolish or naive. Because you couldn't guess, you couldn't judge that person rightly would have just gone back to what they were. If they were lying, if they, years later they reform, but then they fall off the wagon in a big way, back to their villainy pursuits, then I mean that's something you can't really predict. So,
and there are lots of opportunities in role play where if you have the bad guy repenting and saying that they're going to do the right thing, and you're convinced that that person's going to do the right thing, and then they don't, I don't know. I wouldn't consider the people evil for having believed someone and then they went out and did something horrible. I would just say, you guys got to clean this mess up now. It's your problem.
Now you feel obligated because you let this guy live.
Yeah, this happened because of you. Go fix it.
So we kind of got kind of distracted with the whole evil person in the
I
party.
know. I get derailed easy. Go ahead.
Hopefully that fixes it. So we get distracted from the evil person in the party, but that's like more a player issue than. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that you're not just letting somebody play an evil person and it's going to devolve. So it depends on what the character is. So let's say you've got a person that wants to play a character, and they're going to be evil, but they're going to be evil in this way. They tell you their background, and you say, well, I could probably swing a villain for that. And maybe it's like a capstone of the adventure, like, you know, it's going to be 10 levels in and this is going to happen. So this person's going to go about their day all the time with the players. He's not truly like taking the path stepwards to evil, but you know this is kind of like going to be his plot is in the end. Like his story arc is going to end with him joining this villain. Just because naturally that's what's going to occur. And because of the attitudes or the philosophy or whatever of the person kind of aligns with certain aspects of what the villain wants or what the villain desires. And it could be something as simple as, oh, you know, you lost your family in a tragic accident, and I've got the ability to go back in time, but it requires life force or something. And you're like, really? Like how many people? I mean, maybe you're willing to do lots of things if you could relive that moment. Oh, where there's people died in the fire. So at that point, it's kind of a spot where you kind of put the player in this situation, the player character within this situation, where you're going around and getting the scenario set up so this person's going to fall at that point and go against the party. And it seems you've heard the other player characters would have heard how much he talks about how much he misses his family. And if he could ever have the chance to reverse this, he would do it. And he thinks about like, oh, you know, I've prayed to the deities. I've done this. I've done that. You know, I've gone on these quests to have this happen. And you go around and you say, well, other players are probably looking at you like, yeah, he's totally going to turn on us. It's going to happen. This guy says he can go back in time. We, like, all the players are going to be like, when is he going to do it? Well, the player characters might, you know, be no more wiser in that sense. Because, I mean, he's been their stalwart companion for 10 levels. I mean, that could be over a year of gaming in many groups. So you're looking at that saying, yeah, this is totally legit. Like, all the players might be like, yeah, we expected your character to actually do this. And it's a nice story because all the player characters get to feel betrayed. All the player characters get to like have this moment where they are losing a companion, like the companion's died in effect because now he's this agent of the villains. And that can be a really compelling story arc to tell.
Oh yeah.
But if you're doing it because you want to sneakily hide the fact that you're actually an evil person and you're going to screw over the party later, and like, I can't wait till I show this off. That can end badly. I mean, you're free to have that attitude. I'm just saying it might not be as cool as you think when it happens.
Right. And I guess there's two things. I have had evil players who have agreed that at a point of my deciding, if I feel that their player has started to become a threat to the party, really truly evil, or like an actual bad guy, that I get the character sheet and that's my character now. And I've had players agree to that before who are like, okay, when I get out of control, I start poisoning party members, I'll fork the character sheet over and he'll be a bad guy and I'll just make a new character up. So, and that can be very entertaining, like, especially when you look over at that player and you're like, you're skirting the line there, champ. You planning to hand that sheet over tonight? Like, you know what I mean? Like they hand you a little note that's got, I'm going to do so-and-so. And you're like, this is real close.
Yeah. Next time you hand me a little note that says something like this, why don't you hand me your character sheet too?
Yeah, exactly. Just pass the character sheet with it, because that's the end of that. So that can, I guess the big thing we're trying to say is that if you came to the table to be an evil player or a good player that is counter to the rest of the party, and your primary concern is only your own fun, go play Skyrim instead. because you should be thinking of everyone else at the table when you show up at an RPG table. You really should.
I would say instead, if you're gonna have that type of attitude, rather than kick you out of the game, stick around for a while. You may find out that everybody else, you may not want everybody else to have that kind of attitude because you're not going to have fun in that situation.
Exactly.
So it's one of those things where I think it would correct itself over time if someone is given enough time to kind of say, oh yeah, having my own fun kind of just makes awkward situations all the time, and other people seem to not have fun when I'm just having my own fun. And you would, eventually you're either going to leave the hobby, find people that all dig your style. You might get kicked out of a game. I don't know. There's different things that can happen, but I would say, stick around. You might learn something.
Exactly. And yeah, Larry never says never play evil, play true selfish. And I have had selfish players. I've had Kender in my party. Kender. I've had Kender in my party that they're stealing things from other players, they're causing issues, but there's always some connotation of humor or some level of charm to it. And it's really not a big deal. The players clearly, their tempers are not all the way up, So exactly, John Gleeman, cooperative storytelling. That is what you're doing when you show up to play at the table, is have an engaging game session with everyone there. So.
And that evil players, I guess, when you have evil players, you naturally rock the boat because everyone's there to play a game, and there's certain rules to that game. There's the game,
have fun.
There's the rules of the game, and then there's the rules of your social interaction.
Right.
And I feel like evil players just too many times break the social interaction rules. Not overtly, like I'm not like, oh, there's a player, I'm punching another player in the face. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about everybody else assumes that in the end we're all trying to have fun together. Not you kill our characters and you think that's fun as
and
another
be
PC.
Divisive. Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
when you're breaking the rules that everybody else is assuming they're playing by, and again I'm talking about the social rules of everyone gathering together rather than the in-game rules.
Russet Man gives a great example. And hey, if the wizard explodes a couple cows, that's an interesting plot point, but only if the other guys are okay with it. Work within your group.
So that paladin is slitting me through the last time. To take out my anger, I'm going to blow up this livestock. And the player's like,
you did what?
We prefer you don't do that again, but let's not be next to this farmer. Ooh, barbecue.
But yeah, I don't know. If you have people that want to bring something crazy like that to the table, I definitely suggest the conversation at the beginning. My personal solution is when you hit villainy, I get your character.
Yeah, that's your personal preference on how to play.
That's me. That's how I prefer to do it. So,
I'm fine with playing certain things, having certain things happen at the table, but there's a difference between being the villain and being covert about it, and being just like the reverse murder hobo, the one that's actually trying to murder hobo the party but he's like sneaking in there and being like, oh yeah, I'm totally legit regular hero, guys, and I'm just gonna kill you all in your sleep because I've won D&D.
If I know I'm going to get your character and you're being reverse murder hobo, then to me, there might be some entertainment. I'm kind of getting a co-GM out of it. So
Lincoln says the cows were the PCs under the effect of seeming. Okay, so you're gonna co-GM in that kind, so you can like kind of plot against the other players. And in that effect, you are being like a plot device at that point, and like kind of in use by the GM, but you're covert in the sense that the other player characters might not necessarily assume that you're.
Yeah, if you have another character in your back pocket and you're just trying to get a good role playing experience in, and the players know that when the character sheet gets handed to you, that means things are going to get really bad. Like that's a great experience. That's tons of fun. So. Oh yeah.
Panjay, chaotic evil, very defensive of all the other party members. It's usually fine, but it is only when they become antagonists against other party members that they become a villain. Well, yeah, it's like when your friends. It's easy to like the guy that's saving your life.
Yeah.
Right? It's pretty easy. Yeah, it's just like being nice to people who are nice to you. That's kind of a low bar for like interaction. It's not hard to do for the most part. Someone smiles at you, smile back, kind of thing. So you got this chaotic evil guy who just happens to like you and is saving your life. But then he's totally fine with like robbing somebody and leaving them for dead or something like that. Just because, for survivability purposes, he just sees it as, well, I need this money because I'm going to starve otherwise, so I'm just going to take it from these people. They're weak. Maybe I'm a might makes right kind of guy.
Ooh.
If you're a might makes right kind of guy, there's a lot of laws that lose their meaning. A lot of laws that lose their meaning. And you might even think that that's the way the world should really work. And like, in truth, the real laws of the universe to you may be that might makes right. If you're strong enough to take it, you can have it.
We only have a tiny amount of time left.
No!
So,
how did 2 hours go by so fast?
We could do 8 hours of discussing evil villains, and really, I'll be totally honest, we didn't get to do the best part, which is just make up an endless stream of evil villains and the things that motivate them, because that we could have probably done, like we were talking about that beforehand, we could do 10 hours of that. So if you have any more questions for us, we'd love to have them now. Throw them up in chat before we end and let us know what you've got. And maybe we can try and get to a couple of them.
Voltaire rewinds. I'm ready for another 3 hours of this. Oh, you have no other plans? Well, unfortunately, it's a little late here. But yes, put them up in chat. Otherwise, if you're seeing this later, or if you'd like to just include it later in the video, it'll be over at YouTube. So you can just kind of put in your comments and suggestions and other things in the comments below.
Here we go. Mighty Hob had one. We actually had another one. Logan Johnson said, do you consider a bodyguard of a person who the bodyguard blindly follows orders? Is that... Okay, so you're saying if the person were evil and they were blindly following the evil person's orders? I would consider them evil if they carried out evil acts. You, regardless of what orders you're following, you still have a conscience. There's no, you can't make excuses for doing horrible things.
Now, if you're only following orders like guarding this warehouse and you just think regular merchanting things go on in that warehouse, and PCs come up to you and be like, we want to get in here, let us in. And you're like, no, this is my only job. And this is how I feed my family and everything like that, so you can't come in here. And so you kill him and come inside. And, people are being sacrificed or body parts being shipped. Whatever crazy evil thing you want to have.
Body parts.
That's pretty evil, right? I mean, that's pretty clear. Yeah. That's like glaringly evil.
You hit the nail on the head. That's evil.
But that guy doesn't know. They're all in crates and they smell nice. They smell like, I don't know, formaldehyde. He doesn't know formaldehyde's a preserving fluid. So there you go. This guy's just some no understanding commoner.
You just told such a dark story there. What is happening in that warehouse? My character is going to hide in shadows and move in slowly. Like, what is going on there?
Yeah, and maybe the PCs are aware of it, and they're like, well, if this guy's guarding it, he's got to be pretty scummy. And the guy's just like, well, I took this contract. It was posted on the boards, and I went and I got the interview. They were really taking almost anybody that can swing a weapon. Maybe because PCs come in and break in all the time and kill the guards.
We've had 5 adventuring parties this week. Question, how do you feel about an evil character letting a dying player die through an action? It's actually answered in a Batman comic book.
So an evil character says, I could risk my life and save you, person who's bleeding to death over there, or I could leave. Well, it's like, as a PC, as a player, if everybody's playing the game of heroes, the game of saving people, then it's not very heroic. But if you're all in the understanding, you've got really complex natures to your individual characters. So everybody going in kind of knows, well, there might be certain situations where somebody might run and not come back if it's really bad. Or they might say, that person's a loss. I don't think I can make it out of here with them. And I don't have any healing potions or healing spells. So I'm out of here because I want to live. while the paladin might stand over the dead body and fight all the zombies off until they struck down, and that will be the character, like that will be a proper end to that paladin's character arc if that's where he dies. But the guy who's evil and is just like,
he's already killing characters off. What is
if
wrong?
That happens. But I mean, like that's a person that would absolutely go in and do that. That's what they would do. But you've got this guy who's like more selfish, or his desire to live outweighs his desire to save even his companions or friends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, geez, like I haven't been in a situation where I had to say, I might die, but I should probably save this person. It really hasn't happened to me.
If you're running from zombies in the zombie apocalypse and someone falls down behind you and you don't think you can get to them in time and you make it out and the zombies eat them, borderline evil. But if you shoot them in the leg so the zombies have something to eat or trip them and then run away, that's evil. Now we're completely clear.
I would say preserving your own life and not being heroic that's not evil. That's not borderline evil.
Not inherently evil. No. It depends. I don't know. I would have to weigh the specific situation. I don't think I'd have a blanket answer there.
Okay, be situational. But again, that's kind of like we're doing like a yes or no, the yes or no thing here.
I need to know this. I need all the facts in front of me before I make a choice.
But then you're still making armchair debate kind of style on whether or not that's evil, rather than saying, well, my guy's selfish enough that I want to live, or heck, I just want to live, and my drive to live is outweighing my drive to be heroic.
That would be a tough question. If I was using the alignment system, I would not enforce any kind of shift, but I'd be like, that's cold, dude. That is cold. Okay, you're dead. He got away. Wave. All right.
There's conversations going on. I don't know which ones are questions. So we are running over. Let's see if we can grab one more thing. John Gleeman is taking a quest from a devil to kill demons evil or good? It depends. Is it some kind of ultimate sacrifice for eventually that devil to come into the world? And
exactly.
You knew that was the case, but you hate demons and you want to exterminate them? That could be evil. Just saying.
Mm-hmm. I was going to be doing this anyway, so I didn't mind. I just did it. He asked. I was, so I'm in. What do we get for this again? Yeah.
There's stuff that's overall bad, and this is turning into a nature of good and evil conversation. But there's stuff that's overall bad, and then there's stuff that you find out later wasn't a good choice. Killing an army of zombies because you can, and they were trying to eat you. So you have the ability, and they're trying to eat whatever they find. So it could be innocent people. It could be you right in front of me, right in front of us. And then we say, okay, we're just going to kill these zombies. And later you find out, well, we were actually hoarding them, and they just happened to get loose, and we had a way to cure them all and bring them back to life. So you've actually just murdered a whole bunch of people that we were going to save, who happened to be zombies at the time. I mean, at that point, that's not an evil act. You're preserving your life. And second, how the heck were someone figured out a way to, first off, attract zombies into a spot. Second, cure them all. And third, that it was going to happen before you got murdered and eaten and turned into a zombie. So there's certain there's like a convolution to that. At a certain point, you just got to say, all right, at that point, it's the PCs. It's the PCs get to make the decision. Was that wrong? And should they punish the person who did it? Or was that right? And if they've done it and they say, well, this is ridiculous. I can't believe you're treating us like we're murderers right now. Because what is it? In the end, how do you know the future? Maybe those zombies would have gotten out, killed everybody else, started a zombie apocalypse. And then the people that had the cure, it broke on the ground. And then, okay, so no one gets cured and there's actually more zombies. So in an alternative future, you get punished for murdering people who actually would have broken out and killed everybody in a zombie apocalypse.
We had, where did it go? No, I lost a comment I wanted. Boo.
Oh, Kyle Ellis, while you find the comment, is it evil to smush Shanti eggs if their population just waged a genocidal war against the elves? Okay.
You can't guarantee that the babies are going to be evil.
This is the thing. There are many things in war that are not good, but they may be the best choice for your society to continue working.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what I'm going to say about it.
Oh, yeah. Logan Johnson said, my dad used to use the honor point system, and each session he would add or subtract points from the left or right pool, depending on what actions he did. I would just like to say it's amazing to hear that your dad played D&D with you. I am super jelly, man. That is amazing.
That's cool.
So,
Voltaire Rewind question: what is an all-around villain? I wanted to have a villain that continues to respawn in a different place with different abilities, but it's the same person. Well, you can make...
Sorry.
Today
Reflex.
is a puzzle. I'm going to throw rocks at you until you either die or figure out the pattern in which I throw the rocks or your doom. There's the puzzle. Next, I will try and eat you. I will try and chase you down and eat you. Try to not trip in the forest. Skill check. So as far as villain with different ability, there's this cool thing that somebody wrote on Nerdarchy. It's called the Vessel. And what it was an object. It was kind of like it's kind of like an empty automaton, but it had the ability to kind of like one last huzzah. There was a god who made these things, and he let people that had passed away enter the vessel. So the vessel was actually all these. It was like a different person when you decide, like whenever that person felt like they had either completed something or decided, yeah, I've had a good run, or maybe there's a time limit on it, they're done. And then a new soul that has been kind of like in queue can enter the vessel. So if you had a vessel for evil people or villainous people, that villain could just simply be the collected souls of people who have not enacted their plans or have enacted their plans and everything went wrong. Or, kind of, you could do it like that, as if not multiple personalities, but literally multiple people over a time period.
Okay, last comment. Larry Anglin, I DM my kids once a month, ages 6, 9, and 16. You're my hero.
Cool.
That is awesome.
Awesome. Spread the hobby. Grow the hobby.
We're way over.
Yes. So, we have gone way over, but this was a really compelling discussion. I really enjoyed it. We're just going to have to say thanks for the extra questions, and we've got to cut it loose.
Yeah, exactly.
So, if you have the questions, if you have more questions and or comments and you'd like to include them in the discussion, drop them in the comment section over on YouTube later, after this kind of resolves, however it does. And while you're there, let us know what you think in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.